All right, so welcome back, Justin, to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Thank you.
And as some viewers will remember, Justin is with CarbedUp VeganMuscle.
That's right.
And you recently attended or participated in a competition, right? So why don't we just get it right into that? What was the name of the competition?
The name of the competition was the Naturally Fit Super Show, which took place in Austin, Texas. And it was a pretty big competition. There was it happened at a large convention center, or the Austin Convention Center in downtown Austin. So there was bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, and CrossFit. There may have been a few others, I'm not sure. But I competed with the Plant Built team, which you can see we were one of the teams that showed up to compete at the competition. And I competed as one of the powerlifters. I think there was about 15 total powerlifters or vegan powerlifters that competed with the Plant Built team that were there at the show. And we all did pretty well. So of the Plant Built team, there were only bodybuilders, powerlifters, CrossFit, and kettlebell. I forgot to mention kettlebell sport was one of the sports that was there as well.
Okay. All right. Now, boy, there's a couple things here. Now I'm kind of clueless. Tell me about well, first of all, tell me. Go ahead.
I want to grab something real quick.
All right.
Sorry if you can edit that.
Yeah, no problem.
I want to show off. This was the medal that I took home for taking 3rd place in my weight class. So,
dude, that is awesome, man.
Yeah, there was about 10 of us, or 10 competitors in my weight class. So probably about 100 competitors total that were at the competition. And so that was, I was really happy with my performance that day. Everything went pretty well. So.
That's kick-ass, man. That's so kick-ass. Now, that's kind of a haul to go to Austin. Did you guys fly or drive down there? You're in Ohio, right?
Yeah, I'm in Ohio. I flew over. I actually started planning about a year before the competition took place. And so, I mean, I'm not like a wealthy person, so I mean, none of the competitors get paid. I think sometimes people think that members of the Plant Built team are paid to be part of the team, or I've gotten that impression from some of the Facebook posts people have made. But the only exception to that is some of the international competitors coming from Australia or New Zealand or something like that. Some of them, they reimburse some of their flight. Because on average, the U.S. members spend around $300 to $400 on airfare, which was pretty conservative. But the international competitors, they wanted to make it so they didn't have to spend any more than the U.S. competitors did. So they tried to cover whatever additional expenses beyond that they had.
That's cool. That's cool. Now, getting 3rd place, do you get any cash with that, or just the medal?
There's no money in powerlifting. You don't make any money. If you are a pro strongman and you compete at World's Strongest Man or the Arnold Classic, I think there is a pretty large cash prize. I think first place at the Arnold Classic for a pro strongman is about $10,000. So it's not like an income, but and then there's the amateur show at the Arnold's pretty big too. That obviously you won't make any money for that either.
But people who win those kind of events probably get advertising gigs when they win them, right?
Some do, occasionally. A lot of the, strongman competitors are endorsed by companies like, Titan is a powerlifting company. They do some stuff with strongman and powerlifting both. And then there's a few other, they don't get as many, supplement type endorsements like bodybuilders or something would. But they get more, gear, powerlifting type gear or barbells or stuff like that. And
more athletic, athletically oriented, products.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to share with the viewers that, I interviewed you. I looked back and I think it was May of last year. And, Justin made a comment the other day and I didn't recognize him at first, and then I went and I watched one of his videos, and I was like, "Who is this guy? I know him." And I had interviewed him, and the thing is, man, dude, you're getting huge, man. So we may cover some of the things we did in the last interview, but I want to get into the weightlifting a little more than we did last time. Sure. First, can you tell us a bit about plant built? Because I don't know anything about it. So apparently, is this a team of Whole Foods plant-based weightlifters?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Everybody on the team is vegan. And everybody on the team, two of the requirements to be on the team is that they want you to be vegan and they want you to be steroid free. Apart from that, like, everybody has different diets. Some people are endorsed by supplement companies and they're like supplemented to the gills on, you know, every protein, creatine, testosterone booster or estrogen blocker or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a big advocate of all of those things. I've recently started to experiment with creatine a little bit, which is like an energy system when your body produces first ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to actually generate force in a movement. And then the second energy system it brings into is the creatine phosphate. So if you take additional creatine, then you can, you know, maximize the amount of force production that your muscles are able to exert. So, and there are, of course, you know, vegan sources. So I just went to, while I was in Austin, Texas, everybody's like, yeah, you need to try out this, creatine's great. Everybody takes creatine. So I took it or I bought some at Whole Foods. And funny enough, you know, Whole Foods, the name of the company, but I bought some and I've been using it and seeing how I liked it. It's nothing magical, of course. It's just, you know, like, it's kind of like what I would equate to like a vitamin or something. Taking, so.
Well, so now that's the first thing you got. You just listed a whole kind of range of things that other vegans are taking, and of course all of those things would be vegan, right?
Well, it depends on what source and what company you're buying them from. Probably one of the supporters of the Plant Built team is a company called Clean Machine, and I can't really say I know a lot about them. I can't say that I would endorse nor say anything bad about them. They have a product that is a testosterone booster or an estrogen blocker or something like that. And I don't know that I really know enough about it to comment too much on it. If it were me personally, I would cautiously look at some product like that, but I so far have seen no reason that I personally would use it. But, you know, some of the members of the team are actually endorsed by that company, mostly bodybuilders. I don't think they really are very supportive of getting kind of strength athlete, but like aesthetic-based athletes, they seem to be really, really into that. The owner is a guy named Jeff Palmer, spelled Geoff or something like that.
Okay.
He's a really nice guy. I've conversed with him on some of the vegan bodybuilding type forums, and you know, he seems pretty forward. He's very, you know, pro-vegan, very into animal rights and that kind of thing. So.
Cool, man. Cool.
Obviously, other companies too. The company that I bought the creatine from was, I think it might have been a Whole Foods based company, like the line of stores, Whole Foods.
Right.
I just kind of looked into what the products were. So not all of those products I mentioned are vegan. You kind of have to look at, you know, labels and the company itself and see what's available.
Okay. So, one of the things that I'd like to hear you characterize for us, if you will, is your progression in your advancement in terms of your powerlifting ability. And I noticed, I took a peek at our last interview, and you made a statement that when you first started lifting, you didn't feel like your first 6 months were you got a lot of results. Like you definitely felt like your body was changing, but there perhaps weren't a lot of visible results. And then after that, it started to increase more. Is that accurate?
Well, no, not entirely. I mean, I don't know exactly what I said, but what I know to be the case is that my training just wasn't very good. I didn't involved, but I did see results though. I mean, even having like poor training practices, I still got results. Which, I mean, I made videos on my YouTube channel from the very beginning. I actually cataloged the entire thing from the very beginning until now. I think I lifted for about 1 month and then decided I wanted to start, you know, doing stuff on YouTube. And
yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely saw results. Just in terms of being a strength athlete of any type, I definitely, after that first 6 to 9 months or so, I started to really involve practices that would develop me into a much better athlete.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the progression of your training program. So would you say that when you first started, were you doing kind of a typical 3 days a week, or every other day, and then how did that shift over time?
When I first started, I think I worked out on like a Monday and a Thursday or something, and I would do squats and deadlifts one day, and I would do bench press and overhead press another day, and then I had a day where I would do like a third day in the week, like Saturday or something, where I would do just pull-ups, and that was it. That was all I did for the first 6 months, and and those were, those are all exercises that are very effective for producing muscle growth, which is why I got results. But then I started to take on, I was an exercise science student at the time, not necessarily learning about athletics and sports and coaching the way that I began to look at athletics later on. But I was learning, basic like personal trainer, anatomy and physiology type stuff. And I kind of started to come across some aspects of programming and studying different types of lifting routines and programs and ways that different strength athletes implement those. So I started to do something called Starting Strength. It was a book by Mark Ripito, and I read that, and I basically just started to follow that type of program, and it seemed to work very well for, up to a certain point. Eventually, no program lasts forever. You kind of have to modulate things as you go on. So I took that to a certain point, and I went pretty far with it. I was following something similar up until that very first powerlifting meet that I did. And
can you describe that Mark Ripito approach a little bit? Is that kind of like perhaps a
program? You squat all 3 days, 5 sets or 3 sets of 5, and you just do those 3 sets of 5 reps, and you add 5 pounds every time that you successfully get all 3 sets of 5. And then you either do a bench press or an overhead press, and then you either do a rows. I did 10-lay rows, which are off the floor, as opposed to standing up and rowing with the barbell. And
okay.
You do deadlifts. So you pick one of those. There's a squat, a press, and a pull. 3. And I probably added in some other stuff here and there, accessory work, but those were the 3 main lists that I did.
And are those all done on the same day?
Yeah. So it's 3 days a week, 3 movements each time.
Okay.
And that was all with the barbell. So
okay.
Have the barbell work.
All right. And one thing I might have asked you before, but over the whole course of your training period, have you ever had a time where you got an injury?
Actually, not until recently. I started competing strongman, and that was a little over a year ago. I started doing like strongman competition. That was my first one. I got involved with a strongman gym, and so I don't necessarily train strongman more than 1 time a week. And then so when I end up going to like small competitions or something, we had one for the 4th of July. My gym hosted, and we just chose random lifts to do. And I'm a bit taller than some of the other guys. I'm just slightly over 6 feet tall. And some of the guys, at the gym are like 5'6", 5'8", and we were doing something called the John Paul Sigmason deadlift. John Paul Sigmason was, world's strongest man competitor back in, I want to say like the late 80s, early 90s kind of period. Maybe before that actually, because I think he competed with, I can't remember names right now. It doesn't matter. Big, huge in the strongman, world's strongest man competition. But it was a deadlift where you take like axle wheels, and some of the shorter guys would like actually roll the bar back and hitch it up onto their thighs and then stand up with it.
Huh.
Well, for me, the barbell is actually below, or the axle bar, it's like a wagon wheel type thing, is actually below my knees, so that was impossible to do. But I saw some of these shorter guys doing that, and I thought, well, I want to give that a shot because, for some reason that seemed like a good idea. It worked for them. And so the first one I did like a regular deadlift on, that was like 535 pounds or something like that. And then we just add 45s each time. And so we added a total of 90 pounds, 45 pounds on each side, and we went up to 625, I think would be the next weight. And that was where I started trying to do that hitch maneuver thing where you roll it back onto your thighs and then stand up with it. And I ended up with a lower back injury as a result of multiple times trying to do that and missing it. So that's taken a little bit to recover from, but from at least the conventional lifts that I practice regularly every week, no, I've never had an injury.
All right. And can you tell me how? I think when we last talked, you had said on a vegan diet you had gained 30 pounds of muscle mass. So now this is like over a year later. Is that right? Yeah, over a year later. And how much do you weigh now?
I think I weighed in this morning at like 220, 221, something like that. I started out at 175 when I started lifting.
Yeah.
And that was in July 2012. May 2012 when I started lifting.
That's amazing. And are you still doing personal training?
Yeah, well, kind of. I coach like a barbell class where we do both Olympic and powerlifting movements primarily. So
okay.
I do that just a couple hours a week doing that. It's not my primary source of income, right?
Yeah. And did you finish your training? You were getting a degree in.
I switched over to dietetics.
Okay. Yeah.
I did my degree in dietetics.
And are you still doing that, or did you finish that?
I finished.
All right. Cool. So, I guess what I'd like to hear you say a little bit about is comparing your vegan nutrition to the nutrition that some of the other competitors are using. So, can you tell me a little bit about, like, your plant-built team? They're all vegans. Can you say a little bit about how they compare visually to folks that are eating other kinds of diets, and then how they compare strength-wise? If you can, maybe this is too broad a thing to say, but can you say anything about that?
Well, I don't know that there's so much difference in terms of the macronutrient ratios. Like a lot of vegan athletes will follow the same types of different. I mean, within the fitness world at large in general, outside of veganism, there's so much variation within what people practice. Some people, you don't really need a lot of protein. Some people you need incredible amounts of protein. The average, seems to be people want to get 1 gram per pound of body weight. I don't really do that myself, but, that seems to be, some people are eating dramatically more than that. Some people are eating less than that. There's a huge variation amongst people in general. And then when you get into a lot of different aspects of powerlifting, it's gone from say 15 or 20 years ago. When you look at powerlifters, the stereotype was that they were very fat. They were just as fat as you could possibly get, and that was partially because geared powerlifting was very popular. So people would wear squat suits and bench shirts that were assistive equipment. And then now, more recently, and probably the last 5 years or so, you've seen raw powerlifting become a lot more in vogue. So the competitors don't get as much assistance from being fat. So it's actually a major deterrent in raw powerlifting because if you're, in my weight class, 220 pounds, and you're competing, and you're at say 10% body fat, which is pretty low. You should have a nice 6-pack at that body weight, and you're competing against someone who's 20% body fat. Well, the guy at 10% body fat is going to be carrying a lot more muscle to be at 220 pounds. So they're likely going to be, a lot stronger than that person. So they're going to be a more successful competitor. So there is more drive within raw powerlifting, at least, to be a leaner athlete. And then what I see is a lot of the vegans that have gotten in that are more geared towards the raw type powerlifting, and they seem to be focused more on being leaner.
Interesting. Just for clarification, can you define for us is raw powerlifting, is that a kind of a term used within the community, or is that actually a competing term for a particular style?
It's well, like I mentioned, there's geared powerlifting where you wear squat suits and bench shirts and deadlift suits, and they get assistance. So, if you're say you're bench pressing, I don't know, 300 pounds, and that's your max, Well, you may put on a bench shirt and suddenly you're able to bench press 450 pounds. But a lot of people in a bench press shirt will actually have to pull 450 pounds down, so you'll have to be strong enough to pull it down because the exertion of the shirt is so strong. And then the difficult part of the lift becomes locking it out at the top.
Uh-huh.
So whereas in raw powerlifting, you're not allowed to wear any of that assistance equipment. It's just, you're allowed to wear a belt. Then that's really about it. You can wear like wrist straps or something that doesn't really add any weight to what you're able to do, but that's the difference between them. And that is within powerlifting. They'll call it raw. Then the geared is multiply and single ply.
Do you use straps when you do a deadlift?
Sometimes, not in competition. And I usually practice. I use what's called a hook grip. So it's like a double overhand grip, except you wrap your thumb under the bar, and so I use that. But then just to save on wear and tear on my hands, a lot of times I will actually use straps several times. If I usually deadlift twice a week, so at least one of those times I'll use straps.
Gotcha. Okay. Something else. This is kind of a technical thing. I was watching some of the powerlifting squats, and it looks like I mean, this varies probably depending on body type a little bit, but would you say generally for competition rules, a complete squat is that do the hips descend below the knee line? Is that?
Yes, that's the rule.
Okay.
No matter what type of squat you do or what type of federation you compete in, because there's many, the rule is that the hip joint must go below the knee joint in order for it to be a good lift. Some federations seem to be a little more lax on that than others. But the kind of top of the line, and then there's, variation within this federation in particular, but the International Powerlifting Federation, or the IPF, and in the United States we call it the USAPL, United States of America Powerlifting. They seem to be the strictest on following that very deep squat. So, but then there's different types of squats that you can do. I normally in most of my training do what's called an Olympic style, which is a funny term because there is no squat in the Olympics. But most Olympic weightlifters will do a high bar squat where you actually descend all the way to the very rock bottom, your butt to boots kind of.
Yeah.
Way up, and I kind of prefer that myself. But for powerlifting competition, I can squat dramatically more by doing a low bar wide stance squat where I squat down and my hips only go slightly below my knees. And I've recently started to practice that because in competition, for the most part, I've done the more narrow stance kind of Olympic style squat.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I've seen different comments about the safety for the knee in terms of the depth of the squat. So, and some people argue that really going all the way down is safer because if you stop in the middle, that's where the most stress occurs. Is that any truth to that?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert, but my personal opinion is that, that going all the way down would be. Now, if you're doing the wide stance squat, you actually are going all the way down. You're just contorting your body in a certain degree where your hips take the stretch reflex much higher than they would if you were doing the Olympic style squat that I kind of prefer. But either way, I think the worst thing you can do for your knees is not to squat at all.
All right. Cool. All right. Now, tell me the Plant Built team, is that men and women?
Yeah, men and women. A lot of there were some women powerlifters, some very, very strong female powerlifters. Some were pretty popular. Ed, I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Bauer. He was on the cover of Vegan Health, or that vegan magazine that's out, Vegan Fitness Magazine or something like that.
I think I've heard the name, but yeah.
He's there with his girlfriend, Polly, and she competed as one of the female powerlifters. And then, of course, there's many bodybuilders as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, forgive me, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. You do not supplement with protein, do you? So you get all your protein from your food, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I have used supplements at times because people send them to me, and I'll, try this, but at least for like an extended period of time where I'm like making purchases, no, I haven't used protein supplements.
Okay. And something else I was interested in, you talked in our last interview about maintaining weight at a particular caloric intake. And probably weightlifters like yourself are some of the people who are most aware of calories and their effect on strength. So I'm curious, what's been your experience over the time that you've been training? Can you notice when your caloric intake goes down, you feel like you start losing weight? Do you feel like you start losing strength and that you have to up your calories? Does that ever happen, or is it more kind of a wave-like thing where you eat if you're hungry? How's it work?
I usually track pretty closely. Here recently, when I got injured, I was like, screw this, I'm just sitting on my couch and eating what I want. And I think I actually during that time ate less than I normally do.
Uh-huh.
But now when I've actually gone on like saying I really want to lose weight, like I thought about competing at 198 or 90 kilos when I was with the plant belt team, and I actually did start to lose some strength during that time. Maybe I was dropping my calories a little bit too aggressively, because definitely it's possible to continue to get stronger while losing weight, but it depends on how quickly you're trying to do that. I had a very specific date in mind, and I wanted to hit that date. A lot of people will lose strength off the bench press for some reason, more so than the squat and the deadlift, because I think I lost about, say, 25 pounds off my bench press, but I actually gained 25 pounds on my squat during that time. So
Interesting.
it seems to be affected a little more than some of the other lifts.
Is one of the things that happens as you start getting into these higher weights, my guess is that when you first started, you could kind of do things pretty much on your own. Are you at a point now where you have to have someone there spotting you, otherwise it's dangerous, or are you able to still work out alone?
I always work out alone, and I set up safety bars. So if I miss a lift, I just drop the weight onto the bar, and I have done that. I really I try to train at sub-maximal intensities. So I use the RPE scale, or rate of perceived exertion. It's a scale of judging intensity based on 1 to 10. So like an all-out max, I could not have, if a fly had landed on the bar, I would have crashed kind of weight. That would be a 10. And then, so usually I try not to exceed 9. Usually most of my lifts are around 8.5 to 9. So at 9, I would say I probably could have done another rep with that if I had to. And I try not to go beyond that point.
Gotcha.
I try not to miss lifts. I don't think that there's much. I think there's more negative aspects to going to like failure than there is positive ones. Especially, I employ more of a higher frequency lifting. Whereas like somebody that only trains like the bench press or something once a week, then yeah, maybe going to failure is probably fine for them because they'll have a whole week before they do it again. But I bench press. Well, I mean. Currently, I don't really bench press very often, but I push press and do a lot of other pressing pretty often. So,
okay.
Strongman, which I compete in strongman, overhead pressing is kind of the what you typically see. You don't really see bench pressing in strongman, but it's still a good lift to do for that.
And am I right in thinking that strongman usually involves working with traditional objects that are not like weights? Is that?
So the log is a popular one.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite lifts is the log. It's like you'll clean the log up, kind of like you would a barbell, except way different. And then you'll press it overhead. But that seems to be the most popular pressing thing. There's a few others, like an axle bar is like a really thick. It's kind of like a barbell, and you'll put weights on it, but it doesn't rotate the way that a barbell would, and it's, you're gripping, it's very thick, so it's
much harder. And the big tires, do you ever have to do the big tire race? Is that?
That's something that always comes up. People, like, they always think of that when they think of strongman. And occasionally, yeah, but it's probably not one of the more popular, things to see in contests. Compared to some others. The main lifts that you see in strongman would be like the yoke walk, where you're carrying like a large, which another vegan strongman Patrick Magomian holds the world record.
Okay.
In the yoke walk over a certain distance. I think
Yeah.
1,200 and some pounds, or I forget how many kilos that was. 700 kilos, something like that. And so that was incredible. But so the yoke, farmer's carry, where you're picking up large objects and running with them. Deadlift is really a popular one, even with a barbell or an axle bar or whatever. That one comes up a lot. The log press overhead, any kind of stone, Atlas stone loading, or odd stones, natural stones, what they usually call. And then so those are kind of the most popular ones that you see. And then after that would come like the tire flips and some of those type.
All right. Now, I interrupted you earlier when you were kind of walking through your transitions into different types of training, and you'd gotten to, I think, Rippetoe, and you were talking about doing, 3 days a week and a set of complex exercises on all 3 days. And then it sounds like you were you started shifting into something else. So what have you shifted into since then?
Well, I went through several different programs I ran from anywhere from 6 months to a year. A lot of the classic ones are the Mad Cow 5x5, where you just work up to one heavy set. And, I can't remember exactly how all that goes, but it's a lot of the same lifts. Those 5 lifts that I mentioned, the squat, bench press, deadlift, overhead press, and rows, those are kind of like they seem to be the most popular lifts for building muscle mass and that kind of thing. And then some of those are competition lists for powerlifting with squat, bench, and deadlift. But so I've kind of, in a lot of ways, moved away from following any kind of organized program to where I just kind of train throughout the week on, lifts that I want to focus on. So right now I'm very focused on overhead pressing. There's some competitions I see at the end of the year that involve a lot of overhead pressing. So that's what I'm really focusing on, that rather than the bench press. But once I get my overhead press up to a given level, I'll probably go back to focusing on the bench press. And I just kind of organize it a lot differently. And I think for anyone that goes beyond like normal recreational lifting, so there's people that just recreationally lift because they want to look good and they like, the muscle and that kind of thing. And they go very far. Some are farther than I am, actually competing in athletics. But I think that at some point there is a huge benefit to sports and athletics in viewing the lifts as competition movements and practicing your sport. So, like, if you were a basketball player, squats would be good for you. You would increase your vertical jump and a lot of things, but they're probably not going to be as good as actually playing basketball, as doing free throws and, layups and whatever basketball players do. So I do weightlifting, strongman, and powerlifting the same way. I try to practice the lifts with a certain intensity. So if I were to try to do deadlifts on a daily basis, that might be onto, RPE of 10. I would probably be wiped out pretty quickly after doing that for a few weeks. But so that's why I kind of focus on some lifts that aren't necessarily the competition lifts. Like I mentioned that I do the high bar, more Olympic style back squat because it's more of a dynamic movement. There's more stretch reflex. You're not able to move as much weight on it. I also do pause squats, and so you're not able to do as much weight with those, but they're still intense enough that you practice the lift. So those are kind of ways that I minimize the amount of weight that I'm doing, rather than going for all out as much weight as I can put on the bar every time. And by doing that, I'm able to do those lifts at higher frequencies without really, wearing my body out too much.
Yeah. And are you still on a kind of a 3-day thing, or now do you do like 5 days a week, or?
Yeah, I pretty much do 6 days a week now.
Okay.
I do squats 5 of those days. On the 6th day, I usually deadlift, and then I have Sunday to kind of rest up. And, like I said, right now I'm doing push press, which is, if I were doing strict press or bench press 5 or 6 days a week, I would probably look for more variation in the lifts because it can be a little more stressful to like the shoulders and some of the aspects. But with push press, there's a lot of full body generation in the movement, so it's a little easier to do that 5 or 6 days a week without too much, without having to worry about too much of that.
Now this is a real noob question, but clarify this for me. I remember reading once that there's an effect on muscular development that is related to how quickly you do repetitions. So like let's say you're going to do 3 sets of something, and I don't know if you're even doing 3 sets of something, but if you do 3 sets, the idea was you do a set and then you wait a certain amount of time before you do the next set, and that there's some importance to this amount of time in between the sets. Is that accurate?
Well, like earlier, I mentioned that the supplement creatine is a energy system that your body uses to generate, force or whatever. I think that the only thing I would be able to input into what you're asking is that there's so many minutes that it usually takes for that system to rebuild itself into, say you start out at, if we're looking at a scale of 1 to 10 and your creatine phosphate system and ATP and all that is at 10, and you do one really heavy set, so maybe it'll take 3 to 5 minutes and that'll build back up and maybe it gets back up to 8 or 9, and you do another set, maybe that only gets up to 6 or 7, and it'll kind of get up a little lower each time, so you end up getting weaker. Some people have developed a lot of athletic capacity, so they may be able to do 3 or 4 sets at like 9 or 10 range. Maybe somebody who's a marathon runner coming into weightlifting, they have an extreme amount of athletic output that they can do. So they may not be super strong, but within the maximal capacity of whatever they're able to do, they'll probably be able to do it at a fairly high range for multiple sets. And then, assuming they keep up that, amount of athletic capacity as they get stronger, ideally it would, still be pretty high. But no matter who you are, I guess, if you're doing 600 pounds, it's going to be a lot more stressful to your system than if you're doing 300 pounds. So, there's that consideration as well.
So would you say that a good amount of time between sets is 3 to 4 minutes?
Yeah, something in that range. I don't really count the number of minutes.
Yeah.
I know that I have maybe an hour or an hour and a half to lift before I have to go on to do something else, or take a shower to, so I'm not nasty when I show up to whatever I need. So I kind of more look at it that way, and then I may only go up and hit 1 set if I'm short on time, because if you're training the lifts like I do 5 or 6 days a week, if you don't do any back off sets one day, it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. Now, I imagine, have you had to replace a lot of your wardrobe?
Yeah, well, kind of. There's a few pair of pants that I like change immediately as soon as I get home. Like, this is really tight. Or, certain shirts that just, I put on, I look like a little kid, that's grown out of this shirt now. So, yeah, there's mostly the shirts more than the pants, but there's definitely some pants that if I tried to squat down into, I would bust the legs out of them. So that's it.
Is your wife surprised in your development at all?
Well, she's actually talked about that. When she looks at me in a picture or something, she's like, "This is crazy." But when she sees me in person, she sees me every day, so it doesn't really.
Right.
She doesn't notice it as much as other people that are. Know.
Well, and one other thing that interests me about this is the effect on your psychology. So have you noticed any different? Now, of course, for people that see you every day, then they're probably not noticing. But just in terms of walking down the street or going to a party or an event, is there a benefit on your personal psychology, and is there any shift in the way people relate to you as you get more muscular, more developed?
In the way that people react to me, yeah, some people will say things sometimes, or they'll ask me if I'm like a bodybuilder or something like that, and sometimes I just say yes because I don't really want to explain. Well, actually, I compete in strength sports. It depends on how well I know the person.
Yeah.
In terms of my personal psychology, no, I still kind of I don't look at myself and think, wow, I'm huge or something like that. I'm still like the guy that was 175 pounds that started lifting, and I mean, on my YouTube channel, of course, or when I'm talking to people at the gym, I'm full of enthusiasm and confidence, and I'm I'll tell anybody, you're going down, I'm going to beat you. Or I go to competitions and I'll tell somebody, if it's somebody that I know that I'm talking to, I'm like, it's rough today, bro. You feeling okay? I hope you don't mind when I take first place ahead of you. That's all just fun and smack talk kind of thing. In reality, I don't really think any differently than I used to.
That's cool. That's cool. You've over this time you've added about 50 pounds, I guess. Do you find that since you're bigger now, do you need more calories?
No, not really. And the reason that I think that is because I'm a little less active now than I used to be, which I don't see as a good thing. When I'm doing, those reps and sets and things that I mentioned, I'd probably get a little more fatigued and out of breath now than I used to. And a lot of that just has to do with time. If I only have so many hours in a day to do something, I'm going to focus on what is related to my sport. Whereas, if I had more time, I would like to add in more cycling and things like that. And hiking. My wife and I like to take our kids hiking. So those are things I think that I would do a lot better physically and athletically if I kept, doing them. But there's only so many hours in a day, and I would rather sit down with my kids for an hour than, spend an hour on a bike or something.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioning your kids, I remember you said that they were lifting with you, or like a year ago. Are your kids still lifting?
No, they're not lifting. My son was doing swim team for a while.
Okay.
And he loves that. The girls have done gymnastics. I think they'll probably go back into gymnastics here soon. And they just do different things to be active, not necessarily lifting, but yeah, they're still kind of active in sports or whatever they do.
That's great. And one other thing I noticed was when we talked last time, we addressed the raw diet a lot. What's your position now? Are you eating primarily? Would you say it's really a starch-based kind of cooked vegan thing? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I went back and my diet's always changing, but the only consistently it's been is when I was like following like the 80-10-10 style diet, and then I went on to like the starch solution type diet, which in a lot of ways is similar. But when I was doing that, I went back about probably 4 to 6 weeks ago, and I was like, I'm going to do like fully raw, not necessarily low fat, but just whatever raw food I want to eat at that moment. And after about a day or so, I was like, this sucks. I don't ever want to have to do this again. I was
now, why do you say that, Justin? What about it sucked?
I didn't enjoy it. It just didn't. It wasn't as enjoyable to me as it once was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could explain that really any further than to say I didn't get it. So now I was like very whole foods only kind of vegan for a long time, but then the Plant Built team was actually sponsored by a company called Beyond Meat, and I got kind of attached to some of the like products that they have that are vegan products, but they're definitely not food. They have like I've tried at times various types of like
burgers or dogs or I know they have some like a Boca burger or something like that.
Yeah, and I will say they were probably one of the best ones that I've had. But since then, I started. One was I like some of the tofurkey products, like they have like sausage type things like dogs, and now that's been more recent. But yeah, I've been eating more of those now, and I can't, especially the beer brats. They have beer brats, and I don't know. I told them, on my Instagram page, I tagged them, and I was like, listen, when I become a pro strongman, you need to sponsor me. You need to start sending me free products and using me in your stuff. I don't know how they'll feel about that, but
that's cool. This came up in a recent interview I did, and I don't eat a lot of tofu or products like you're describing it, but I have, recently, I think it's when summertime comes around, I feel like having a hot dog. And so I get one of these, tofu dogs, get a couple packs of those, but, one of my viewers, referred me to I know there are problems with these foods, and I know they're not the ideal food in terms of health, but I do think once in a while it's not going to kill you, and, but this other person made an interesting thing. They were like, why do you want to eat products that are like meat? Why would you want to duplicate that? But I think
I actually said that before too, and I think a lot of it's psychological.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily grow up eating sausage. We talked in the last interview. My family's very Appalachian. We come from Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm from Kentucky. And I grew up eating for breakfast every morning. We'd have ham and eggs and bacon and pancakes with lots of butter and that kind of thing. At lunch, I would have bologna sandwiches and sandwiches with white bread, all white bread, and the pig's feet and pickled bologna and that kind of thing. And then for dinner, we have fried chicken and biscuits and stuff like that. So maybe there's some psychological aspects to it, but those aren't the foods I'm eating, like from the Tofurkey company or Beyond Meat. But if you're like thinking, well, why do you eat something that's like that? Well, somebody from Papua New Guinea is going to want to eat fruit and sweet potatoes because that's how they grew up their whole life. Somebody from China is likely going to eat rice and vegetables because that's how they grew up their entire life. Maybe somebody from England is going to have tea time and, I don't know, whatever people from England eat on a daily basis.
Steak and kidney pie, right? Yeah.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to use that same mentality for Americans that grew up eating a very specific way.
I like that. I think there are times where it's okay to satisfy a psychological inclination, and as I mentioned in the other video, there's a kind of density that you get from some of these foods that it kind of fills you up. It does fill you up.
Yes. It's one of the. All of the macronutrients have a different effect on satiation. So, like the foods that you and I probably have had the most experience with, at least in the last few years, with like the 80-10-10 or McDougall style diets, are that they are very satiating in terms of the volume. They fill your stomach up, which is why people go on those diets and they lose weight. But then when you look at fat, it actually has a longer satiety, so the length of time. And then protein is kind of like a mixture of both of those. So protein actually, it is 4 calories per gram, so it's the same as carbohydrates in terms of volume. And it has a fairly long satiety rate in the way that fat does. So maybe that's why people that go on diets, like say, eat more protein, because it has those aspects. I don't think there's anything magical about protein beyond that. It's not our body's ideal energy source. And it has less involvement in any hormonal or any production like that, like fat would. So both of those aspects are carbohydrates and fat. And then the only real thing that protein is beneficial for is for tissue repair, which, you're probably not going to do enough damage to, constitute eating 300 grams of protein or whatever people do a day. But
yeah. And I think you're a great example of the fact that you really don't need that much protein to generate a lot of muscle. You can do it. You can do it on around 10%. 10% of your diet in protein, and you can grow quite a bit of muscle. So that's interesting. Now, does the Plant Built team? Do you guys have like a site or a channel?
Yeah, there is a website. It's run by Giacomo Marchese. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. I pronounced it away for a long time, and then he actually said it, and I was like, oh, that's not how I did it. So I think it's Marchese, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend is Danny Taylor. They founded the Plant Built team, and they have the website plantbuilt.com. I think it's.
That's great.
So you can see I have a profile there. It's older, has some older lifts, but.
Cool, man. Cool. All right. Well, it's a pleasure to catch up with you. Are there any topics that you'd like to include here? Anything you'd like to add?
No, not off the top of my head. you can find me. I have, many topics. I post, 3 or 4 times or more per week on my channel, CarbedUp VeganMuscle on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram as CarbedUp VeganMuscle. There's an underscore in between each of the words. And then I have a Facebook page that probably doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but I post that, a few times a week, CarbedUp VeganMuscle on Facebook as well. So.
Tell me, I'm kind of clueless on Instagram. What's the deal with Instagram? So you post, I had the impression that it's like you post photos, but now.
It either. One of the other Plant Built team members, a really good friend of mine and great powerlifter named Jake Henderson. His girlfriend is Erin Fergus, who's been in some of those vegan magazines and stuff too. So they're a popular couple, and they're very nice. They're if I had one topic, just to go, I'll come back to Instagram in a second. But
yeah,
one of the best things I would say about the Plant Built team that I loved was the interaction between the people. So like you took a group of people, we're all vegans, but we all have different types of vegan diets. We all are people, we have different religious backgrounds. I'm a Christian, I come from a Judeo-Christian, or, I have Jewish background as well. So,
yep.
There's that, and, different people have different religious beliefs, but, we all spent a week together in Austin, Texas, and the relationships that were built during that time were just incredible. We walked away, it was like the end of summer camp, and I walked away with friends that, and people that I value greatly. My cat's getting a little. But, so that was probably my favorite part about competing with Plant Built, was getting to know these people that I care so much about now. But with the Instagram thing, Jake Henderson said, hey, J-Dog, or J-Mo, you gotta get some CarbedUp VeganMuscle on the Instagram. And I posted, I didn't even know anything about it. I knew it was big, so I created a CarbedUp VeganMuscle Instagram page. And so you can post videos there as long as they're 15 seconds or less, and then you can post photos. So I'll post something that I ate or something and sometimes I use like Pick Stitch and just put in 2 photos, so like a picture of me flexing or something crazy, or doing a lift, and then a picture of my toast with jelly or something on it.
yeah, dude.
And I still don't really get it, but it's there. I've met some people that way, so.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, shoot, man, it's a real pleasure to see you again, and you're an inspiration. I got to confess, I sometimes feel that my fitness enthusiasm, I have it to a degree, but it's compared to some of the vegans online who they seem to be, it's like professional athletic training. I'm not that strongly inclined towards athleticism, but I admire it, and I think it's so cool what you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm 33 years old. I'll be 34 in about a month or so. And, I got into this at 31, and I gotta tell you, once I get to like 40 or so, I may very well say this sucks. I'm gonna start riding my bike to work, and that's about it. I'll always do some form of lifting, for, just regular general health sake, but I don't think anybody sets out to just lift weights and for health, and at the same time strap 500 pounds on their back and squat that. There's a difference there. So I actually do. I made a video recently talking about training partners, and I said my training partners were those IPF world record holders there on powerliftingwatch.com, which is a site that compiles all the federation's different world records. So I looked at the drug-tested records, and I said, I want to beat those. So I call those guys my training partners, and, I have athletic goals within, the sport that I compete in. But,
yeah,
done with that. I don't know if I'll keep, doing it quite at that same intensity, but.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but I did an interview with a couple. They run a gym in, I think it's either Wisconsin or Minnesota. It's called the Monkey Bar Gym. Have you heard of these folks?
John Hines, I think, is the guy.
Yeah. That is a really cool thing they got going there. I think you'd like that.
It'd be something I would be into at some point.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, Justin, all the best to you and your family. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll be in touch again.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Later.